right, I'm back with Drummer Nation Live, and I have a very special show for us today. Of course, I have my world-class, world-renowned buddy and pal and partner in crime, Adam Nussbaum, with me today. And a very special guest is Jim Toscano. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Where am I?
What?
Am I on the show? What's happening?
You're on, baby boy. Adam, welcome again.
Good to see everybody. I want to, before we continue, let's hope for a nice Thanksgiving for everybody, and let's continue to hope for some tranquility in this world.
That would be nice.
Absolutely.
Yes, that would be something to be thankful for.
Yeah, man.
Now, I do have a show planned. My idea is we can talk about anything on this show as long as it relates to drums or drumming. And I do have a guest coming up we're going to tackle this Middle Eastern thing because of bands and musicians who play together who are maybe Israeli and Palestinian or any other kind of configuration that drummers or musicians have been hip to for 100 years. And we hope the rest of the world catches up with us in terms of brotherly love. That being said, that's a future show. Jim, how are you, sir?
Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it. I'm doing well.
You
feeling good.
Make no bones about the fact that you've been ill.
Yeah. I mean, it was a long year going through my crazy cancer journey, as many drummer friends have in the last couple of years, including this here guy. Gotta show the love.
Special love to Dom. The last show I did was a tribute to Dom, and he was a friend to the entire industry. Never saw him without a smile on his face. The most enthusiastic, eager world ambassador for drumming we've ever had, probably.
100%. I mean, really the glue, I think, of like the drum community, and every, as I always say, he was the center of every drum event on the planet practically. Yeah. And to that point of being the glue of the community, I think I've met you originally from an introduction from Dom, probably early 2000s, maybe at a PASIC.
Somewhere in there. I got involved with a cymbal company in 2004. So it's probably shortly after that.
I think it was 2006, maybe. And
I don't know.
Every time there's sort of this 6 degrees of separation. Every time I think about somebody I've met, it goes back to Dom somehow, in one way or another. So, and same for you, Adam. I mean, we met really in passing at PASIC a few times. And so PASIC is also one of those important things to our industry that brings the community together, besides all the educational stuff and all of the gear, of course, but it's making these connections and relationships, so.
Exactly. Plus, I've always been a big fan of PASIC because that's the one for drummers to go to. That's the one at NAMM. The manufacturers are there to sell gear to dealers. It's a dealer conference. Yeah. And the public's not really allowed unless sometimes they have a public day. But that's not the focus of the show. PASIC is about drummers. There are presidents and vice presidents and product guys and artists. Everybody's at their booth there to talk to drummers. Not to mention the education aspects of it, and the hang and the social camaraderie and all that. It's just a beautiful drum love-in.
Yeah, the hang is what I look forward to every year.
Yeah.
So.
In fact, when I sold my company, I realized I didn't sell my friends. I still have to go. And I saw Barry Greenspan on one of those, man. He used to have Drummer World in New York. And I said, Barry, what are you doing here? And he said, I don't know, man. These are my peeps.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
You never walk away from that part of it.
Yep.
And I met Adam through this whole thing as well. Anyway, Jim, you have kind of a three-pronged career going. You're an artist, a drummer, of course. You are an educator, and we'll talk about your book you have out. And you're also a media consultant. Is that the best word for that?
Yeah, I would say media consultant, sort of the idea, my idea of branding, sort of a multimedia education platform, helping drummers to sort of bring together audio and video and, kind of being able to wear all of your hats that we do in this industry within your drum space and how to do that efficiently and at a high level. So, yeah.
Well, you have some very distinguished clients. Who are some of those?
Yeah, so really Dom was my first client. If I, go back many, many years, he was teaching online when it was sort of like a can of soup and a string to the next guy's house. And then, I started to learn from him. Oh, I can do this teaching thing on the internet. And I started to put together a multi-camera setup with a very raw security, closed TV switcher, and then proceeded to give Dom all of that sort of upgrade to his studio, and we kind of worked together on that. And then he just kept recommending drummers to me, and so over time I've really helped all of the local drum teachers. So my clientele base is tons of drum teachers. So I work with drum teachers all the time. And then during the pandemic, when everybody was not touring anymore and going through some challenging times, Dave Weckl reached out to me, and David Garibaldi, and Stanton Moore, and Joe Rosenblatt, and Carl Allen, and just on and on, Carmena Peace. So I just started helping all these cats get their sort of tech on for their online teaching programs. And it sort of blew up. I mean, I had magazine articles about what I was doing, and, PASIC did a piece on me. And then I got invited to do a clinic last year at PASIC, teaching sort of the ropes of what I do here, which people think I'm absolutely bananas, but I rented a truck. I took my kit. I took video screens and a switcher and multi-cameras and all this audio stuff, and I drove out to Indianapolis from New York and set up basically what I do in the studio here on stage to give people that sort of experience on the fly on the big screen behind me, which was great. It was really a great experience, and people still come up to me about that clinic, a year later at PASIC. They're like, man, that clinic last year was great, so it's nice getting, sort of that feedback. And and I'm helping drummers. I mean, Absolutely. Let's face it, that's what we want to do. So,
well, we sort of started on the technical stuff. Let's do that for a little bit, but I do want to cover your career as a drummer and an educator.
Cool.
And Adam, of course, you're free to jump in at any time. How important is this? I mean, you have people say, I don't care. And others who, and also there's a different standard for teaching and for students as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think that it's important. I don't think it's, the end all be all of what we do, obviously. But, for people that needed to shift and pivot and, build this online presence, it's, if you look at technology now and social media, everybody is just putting stuff out there all the time. And you're competing with kids that have their stuff together. As older guys, we kind of had to figure it out. And sort of social media has sort of become the medium that people go to discover talent. So there's these different levels of it, right? And I think if you find this to be intriguing, first of all, you have to kind of like the idea of technology. I will speak for David Garibaldi. Like, he does not like technology. Not a friend to him, and he doesn't want to really deal with it. So I made very simple setup for David, right? Something that he could learn really easily. We always make a joke about cables and dongles. He's constantly ordering a dongle. He doesn't, he's freaking out.
I hate the dongles. I hate the dongles.
You gotta hate the dongles. I had an idea for a show. I'm drawing a blank on what the second word was, but it was dongles and something else as like sort of a presentation show.
Doggles, bangles, and beads.
Nice.
Nice.
And dongles, yeah.
We could open a store with dongles and bagels. Being in New York, but
free Wi-Fi, dongles, and bagels.
But it's sort of I think it's become sort of commonplace, first of all, and I think that if you're able to sort of embrace the technology a little bit, I try to make it as simple as possible to teach this stuff to people. And I think that it provides an opportunity that maybe we didn't have before. For instance, if you used to have your students coming to your place and then the pandemic happened and now it had to switch to online. After the pandemic, now you have that option. Okay, the student can come in, but if it's snowing and can't get here because there's too much snow on the ground. Let's just jump online. Or I kind of have a cold. I don't want to come in, but yeah, we can jump on a Zoom call. So, it kind of increases the availability of people, if you will.
The guys in Tokyo,
Exactly. So, I teach internationally. I'm teaching, in all these different states every day. So, you have to keep track of time zones. That gets tricky. But, it's sort of, something I had done before, but, much more now. So I'm 95% online, and maybe 5% comes into the studio.
I've gotten to where I almost prefer teaching online.
Yeah, I mean,
I got cameras everywhere and monitors everywhere. I'm totally comfortable, electronic or natural, or you can share screens. You can punch up all these books you want via Hudson Music.
Yeah, the Hudson Music app, have a screen capture. I do the same thing. I have side view, overview, kick view, I have cameras that move on tracks, all kinds of fun stuff. But
let me ask you this. Audio is more important than video, right? I mean, they say that people will put up with grainy video, but not funky audio.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, for instance, I've helped a lot of Nashville guys. I was helping Rich Redmond put together a setup. Rich is a great guy. Love him.
He's got a great show, and it's really well done technically.
Great show. Yeah.
Jim there with him too. Yeah.
And so for teaching online, I always suggest this gizmo on my head, which looks like, basically I'm doing sports announcing or something. But the sound of the audio is clear. It's good. It's easy to do this. Yeah, exactly. So, this Audio Technica thing, I can throw the mic up, pull it back down, and, Rich Redmond would break my chops and be like, hey, man, I don't really dig that helicopter pilot look. He's like, I just want to go with the lav mic and the earbuds. But, it's, I think audio is hugely important. And, there's a lot of people that, give me slack for this, but I totally believe in getting on Mac over Windows. And there's reasons for that when it comes to audio, just as far as the online thing.
That's one of my questions.
And having a good Mac, interface. Right? Yeah. Because, I always make the joke. I'm like, oh, you have a PC. I'm like, do you own a pool? They're like, yeah. I'm like, all right, take the PC outside in the backyard and throw it in the pool.
When I first got involved in this stuff, Mike Snyder, he's now at Zildjian, but he's another tech guy. Worked for Roland forever and designer, sound designer, all that stuff. Great guy, good friend. But when I first started, I had a PC and I just couldn't work. He said, I just spent 1,000 words in an article trying not to say, just get a Mac.
Yeah. And
I did, and everything worked.
I used to, hold back, and I would be like, well, it's okay. And then, after a while, I was like, screw it. I was like, don't get a PC, just get a Mac. It's going to be easier. Just for the fact that multi-channel audio shows up on a Mac, on Zoom, on Skype, on all the platforms.
Exactly.
So you can't do that with a PC without bussing down to a stereo feed. So without getting too technical,
just to interrupt you for a second, I just learned how to do this thing with my student on Zoom where they can use GarageBand, right? And open a channel for their drums, whatever mic they're using there. Another one for a track they're playing along to, because so much media has play-along tracks. Send them both into Zoom, and I hear it in real time when they're playing along. Yeah. That, to me, is just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and, eventually, I think it's not there yet, but eventually the idea of actually playing with someone in another city or state is coming. But
it's coming, but not
It's
yet.
been coming for a long time. Right. And there was a point where there was this little box. I don't even remember the name of it. It was a little red box, and it was like $300 for each one of these boxes. And it was made by this company that you would buy the box, and then you would have a subscription to their website, and it would connect you with someone, further away. But the problem is you would have to constantly sort of resync. And if somebody had slower internet than you, they couldn't really get on board. And that's really the problem now, So, I'm on a wired connection. I buy the fastest connection that I can afford from my provider. And, then you'll have somebody that's on Wi-Fi and sort of working with an iPad or something, and it's just glitching out, and it does become very difficult.
Right.
But to that point, I do try to teach my students and give them sort of a guide on what their setup should be compared to, my educator friends. So,
well, let me ask you this, because this is 2 points of view from 2 very established world-class artists. One is a student told me, I took a lesson with such and such. I didn't really learn anything because the sound was so bad, I couldn't make out what was going on. Mike's, bleeding and clipping and everything. The scene. And the other one was another world-class guy who said, this guy was quizzing me on the net before he took a lesson from overseas about all my gear, and it just irritated me because I'm I'm who he was, and I don't need to deal with that. He's too focused on gear. So that was almost offensive to him. So both of those guys have a point.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. It can get touchy, right? But I think, there's levels of doing this. Obviously I've been working on my studio for a very long time to put this together. It didn't happen overnight. I didn't just go out and buy, oodles of gear and just make this happen. I've been refining and testing things. I mean, I would buy things that I would try it out for a week and just be like, oh my God, this is terrible. And then sell that and then try something else, constantly trying to refine it. Mm-hmm. But there are levels of it. I mean, and budgets, right? We have to always consider someone's budget. Maybe, there's that, right? So I've had a student recently that's trying to get their online setup going, and they're like, I need to be able to get a setup all in for under $200 or under $100. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be challenging, but I have some ideas.
It's doable at a minimum level.
Yeah, completely.
And then you how much do you always want to upgrade, right? Once you open that can of worms, you just want to get better stuff. So I'm looking at my rig now and I'm thinking, this looks okay. I could do better. My DSLRs don't work for video, they time out. Do I want to go out and buy 3 new and I said VCR, didn't I? DSL. Do I want to go out and buy 3 new DSLRs and lenses and all? And how much better is it going to be?
Right.
Whenever I'm on meetings, I used to do a Monday night meeting with, it was just for world-class drummers and industry guys, the kind of people I felt you usually had to pay to get access to.
Okay.
So I didn't have it open to everybody, but 50 or 60 drummers came by over the course of the time, and they could just drop in and out. But nobody really, of all these great drummers and industry people, nobody really had the kind of gear that, looks fantastic.
Right.
It was all just that. And then I was helping a woman running for office a year in the last election cycle. And I went to all kinds of meetings, for the party or the staff or this or that. Everybody looked terrible. So, and they're slumping in their chairs and the light is bad and they don't care. How good does it have to be for whom?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's something to be said for at least having, today my lighting is a little dimmer than normal for my sort of podcast setup, but having your face viewable. And then as drummers, we can't be, okay, check out this routine that I'm playing and the student can't see your hands. So we have to take all this stuff into consideration. But, and remembering that you're on camera. I mean, I have a habit of looking right into my lens, even if my monitor is over there. Mm-hmm. So, I'm always trying to speak directly into the eyes of the person that I'm with. That's super important.
All the time. See, there's my camera and there's my monitor.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like that. You'll get at the top of my head. There's an awful lot of things to get right. And
there are
more to get wrong.
On the rig, behind me over at the drum kit, I actually have the camera coming down from the ceiling right in front of the monitor, so I can have this quick, up and down. But at my desk, when I'm coaching and doing this kind of stuff, my monitor is here. So if I'm looking at your face, we're not making eye contact. So I'm very conscious about staring here and not here.
Right.
So eye contact is a huge thing. I mean, we're making connections with people where, and you can't really show interest if you're like this. So, if you're looking over here, they're afraid that you're surfing on Amazon trying to buy, some treats for your
Get
dog.
that Black Friday deal. And if you're a host,
exactly.
though, you got notes, you've got to hear what the person is saying and actually listen and respond, but you also have an agenda to move through.
Yeah.
And you're looking at all these places, and then am I popping my peas? There's just a million things to do wrong, and I've done only 100,000 of them.
All of them. In fact, I just did it. I try to be very conscious of saying a million times, which Dom, my mentor, was always, Toscano, enough with the ums. He booked me on my first couple of clinics, and I know, speaking to a crowd for the first couple of times, you take a pause, and rather than you feel so uncomfortable to pause and get a thought, so you're immediately saying, well, yeah. So
Stanton told me that one of the biggest things he learned was it's okay to have a bit of silence. It's okay. Somebody asks you a question, you think about it for a second.
Indeed.
Well, that also gives what you say a little bit more impact.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, think of that as a musician, space.
Total.
We have
drummers,
to
we also
respect
have
that.
to be especially aware of that because we're one of those instruments that don't have to stop playing to breathe.
Indeed.
Guitar, piano, those kind of instruments have a tendency to play too many notes because they can.
In fact, I do have to remind my students to breathe because you'll notice that last night I actually had my young student Antonio in here doing his recording his auditions, pre-screening auditions for Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music. So I had a trio in here playing with him, and I kept looking over at him, and his face was like that. It looked like he was playing trumpet. And I was like, dude, breathe, let it out, breathe, breathe in, breathe out. Don't hold your breath the whole time you play. Tension goes from here to here to here. So
pay attention, don't have tension.
See, there's an A-bomb. There's always a few.
I love it.
Hamilton talks
the line I'm always using is don't think, pay attention.
Nice.
Because, if you're in the process and you start getting in your head and thinking about things, that's interfering from just reacting and responding.
Indeed.
And the thinking process is something that's usually done when you're shedding and you're doing stuff. But I'm really somebody that could benefit by some of your wisdom and your knowledge because I'm really, I'm a Stone Age man when it comes to the technology. And but I've been able to, put up my little Zoom camera and get the right angle, have it go through FaceTime or whatever, and at least enough to transmit the content that I'm trying to do.
Right.
It may not be the slickest thing, but I'm more concerned with the substance of what the situation is. And these days, like you said, there's so many people that have so much gear and have the gear savvy, but they don't really have the substance. And I think it's very easy for people to be blinded by the style more than what the depth of the content is.
Indeed. Yeah, I would agree with that.
What you're doing is bringing, the whole package to the table, which is necessary, ideally.
Right.
People want to see something that's going to pull them in and be able to hear good audio, have good visuals, be able to mix things up from above, side to side, the feet. It's a great thing to be able to have that together.
And, it to that point, it also presents the opportunity. So I was able to, over the pandemic, do drum clinics from home. So that's something, I wouldn't have thought of doing before. And having the multimedia kind of setup allows that to be a little bit better visually, right? So if I'm doing a section from my book on fills, and I want to show from above kind of what the hands are doing on a particular orchestration or something, or it's using a particular foot technique, so I can go to my foot cam. So it provided that opportunity for doing these clinics and then getting involved with helping to run drum clinics online, which is, a whole nother avenue that we can go down, right? So,
well, there's basically two different approaches. There's pre-record and there's streaming.
Indeed.
Right? Lessons are streamed. That's live. What we're doing here is live. Pre-record's a different animal. You may use multi-cameras. You may edit in post. You may go into Final Cut or whatever you're using. That's a lot more work.
Yeah.
Generally, and a lot of different gear.
Yeah.
So we do both, and this is not the rig I use for other things.
Again, like when you think about opportunities coming up with this kind of thing, the other thing that, a lot of guys are starting to realize these days is that, let's say you're teaching, you can handle X amount of hours per day of lessons. And so you're teaching online or in person, those slots fill up, and now you have a waiting list because people want those same slots and they can't really fit anywhere else. And so how do we deal with the waiting list issue or just getting your content out to people that may not want to come in person or be on Zoom? They like watching, we have this YouTube generation that wants to watch everything on YouTube or on a video model. So you can use this exact same rig to prepare some pre-recorded content, build a course model where you have passive income. You've done the work, you put the time in, you film your content at a very high level, you're teaching something of value that maybe someone else isn't offering. And then now you have this course model, and that's going to provide income for something that you put in the sweat equity. You put in the time, you shedded for years to do it. And now you're teaching this thing that is available 24/7, 365 days a year. And you can go about your teaching and potentially teach a little less and have a little time for yourself, a little, family time, dog time, walking in the park time, meditation, whatever you're into. So,
All right. Well, I promised some people some spots. Let's do a couple here. Take a short break. These are only 15 seconds, folks, and there's only two of them. So please sit tight. Here we go. New from Bopworks, it's the Stick Station. Stick Station attaches easily to any rim and makes quick work of changing from sticks to brushes. Stick Station is available at bopworks.net and from fine percussion retailers.
The stories that go on, if these walls could talk, holy mackerel, we'd all go to jail.
Oh, that's great.
By the way, I offer these cross-posting to anybody who wants to do it on their Facebook page when I go live in exchange for ads or mentions or things like that. So let me a couple little more things on this, and then I get back to Jim Toscano, the artist, the educator. If you're going to do a podcast, before the pandemic, there was a few podcasts out there. Now there are millions of them.
Yeah.
Everybody has one, and that's a good thing. But should anybody expect to make a dime at this?
No. No. Think about it. Yeah. Well, the thing is this, that would be great. There's so many podcasts happening. So, views, what are the numbers? We were talking about earlier, off camera, people that live stream and sort of put up content. You have somebody like Rick Beato that does a video cast, and he has, millions of followers. So he's monetized. He's definitely, providing something that is bringing returns. He will say that basically the return is coming from selling his course. So it's a way to promote that, but he is monetized. The YouTube algorithm suggests Rick Beato pretty heavily, and he's good at it. He's really good at it.
He's an Atlanta. It's a great show.
Yeah, and he's extremely knowledgeable, and he just has a personality that's kind of easygoing and easy to follow and to watch. But I think the expectation it's sort of with everything we do. Go into it because you love it and because you want to put a message out or you want to connect with drummers. My live stream thing that I did for the last 2 years, I stopped during my cancer year, we'll say, but the 2 years previous, and it's coming back in January, it's not monetized. I'm not making anything. And it really was just connecting with drummers and having this conversation about what we love and just nerding out on records and, talking about somebody's playing or talking about, being on the road or gigging or, whatever the case may be. But it's something that we love and we do it for that reason, first and foremost.
I agree.
The reason
completely.
we started doing this.
Right. But you need millions of hits to make any money. And I promote this stuff across many, many channels, and I get 2, 3, 4, 5,000 hits. I'm delighted with that. But that's not enough to sell any ad time for or anything like that. So just so people know, it's very important, I think, what we're doing here, but that's why we're doing it. But it's got to be a labor of love. Yeah,
indeed. And, I'll find the same goes for the guests. I mean, I'll have guys come on that are friends or drummers that I've connected with that come on and they're really eager to share stories and they like the questions and, that they never bring up, is there any, what's going to come from this? There's no expectation of a return. And, sort of Billy Cobham did 2 episodes back to back and we just went deep on records and his playing and education. And, we just had this great connection. And so I think we really have to do it out of the love to just share the stories. And I was really trying to share some questions that maybe guys weren't asked, being really thoughtful about that. Right. But again, the end game is not money. The end game is to get some stories out there and share. So
yeah, the end game is I'd like to see videos like this with Shelley and Max and Philly Joe and all those guys, and we don't have that.
And Adam.
Well, he's with us now. I'm talking about 50 years ago. I want to see these things on Mel and on Tony Williams.
Oh yeah,
Elvin. Go ahead, Adam.
Right.
No, it's just a fascinating reality that we're living in now, that we have at our disposal, anywhere in the world. You have internet, you have a laptop or whatever, you have access to so much information that was never present before. What kind of disappoints me is a lot of times when I'm at gigs now, I'm not seeing enough young people. And I think this medium is so valid and so important to the times we live in. But I think of my own personal experience, because I can't draw on anything other than that. The events that had the deepest impact on me were being in the room.
Yeah.
And, going and hearing somebody live. And as great as it is to be able to have this, you never forget when you were in the room and you felt that energy.
100%. And I agree.
It's important. And I always make a little spiel at the end of the gig. I'm looking out and I'm seeing everybody with no hair or gray hair. And I'm saying, don't even ask the kids if they want to come. Grab them and drag them out. And bring them out to experience the actual thing. Because what's that? Ain't nothing like the real thing, baby.
That's right.
You have to do it especially while the elders are still here. And for youngsters, they have to understand that. And, this is a process that takes time. And the way they've grown up now with everything being instant, I'll ask Siri, I'll ask, Google. You can't Google what we do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why you practice. This is why you put the time in. You want to get to that point where you're not thinking, you're just doing it because you put in that time. And it's difficult for kids that are growing up now because everything is instant.
Yeah.
And it's important to realize there's so many benefits from what technology has brought, but you still have to go through that process. We're still human. We are not digital.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's necessary. That's
Yeah.
just me, man, because I love this art form so much and the music, and it's been so amazingly satisfying for me, not on a monetary level, but beyond what money brings.
Right.
And that's something that it's like I'm just feel so much gratitude and feel so grateful to have been able to experience some of the things that I've been able to. It's worth more than money.
Yeah,
exactly.
man. I would say, one thing I try to do, like for instance, bringing students out to the Vanguard. We're right here in New York. Like kids don't go out to live music. You're right. They're too busy looking at it on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. So I'll grab some students and take them over to the Vanguard. They'll meet John Riley and get to watch a great band play.
Change their life.
Say that again?
It will change their life.
100%. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that impact, like you said, you'll always remember that. The feeling and what you learn, what you take in. You're not going to learn that on any screen for sure. And to that point too, like last night, my student recording his Juilliard audition, it was a chance for him to play with some older guys in a trio situation, which he didn't really ever get to do before. And I think he learned more last night than he has the whole time playing drums. He got in the room with a great upright player, piano player, and a horn player, and just, had that experience. So I think we need to push that as well,
Well, the whole
drums.
thing about, playing drums, we're really not considered, and we really don't function as a solo instrument. We work with others.
Right.
And learning how to listen, learning how to help shape what's going on around you. These things are necessary, and you can't do it if all you do is stay home and practice. You'll
Right.
get really good at practicing, but what about hearing? I mean, at the end of the day, I think the greatest musicians hear the best. And as a drummer, why are you going to get a job if you want to play with other people? You have to learn about that part of the process that needs to be done as well. I mean, for me, I think one of the greatest lessons for young drummers is to play with experienced bass players.
Yes.
And vice versa. Get together with a great bass player. Have him tune you up a little bit.
Yeah.
They know what they want to hear. We don't play with drummers. We get vocabulary, we get ideas, we get things like that. And that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we have to, like what you said, the experience this young man had yesterday playing with people that were more experienced with him, that's invaluable.
Totally. Yeah.
Let's look
and
at
it elevated, in the moment, we could see him elevating his process. He stopped thinking, he started listening, he was smiling. So he was put on the spot, in out of his comfort zone with these older guys that are all like, looking at him over in the corner, and he rose to the occasion. So, they need that.
Yeah.
Let me look at the other side for a second, because the Rolling Stones have a new album out, and it's pitch corrected. You got Mick Jagger singing with pitch correction.
Wow.
That's what I said. Wow. And Motley Crue is out touring with tracks of the whole performance. There's video of you're hearing the drums, but Tommy's not at the kit.
They're Milli Vanilli-ing the whole thing.
Well, at least Milli Vanilli wasn't even them.
Yeah,
singing.
yeah. Right.
If
That's
the crew
true.
has the concert taped and they are performing to it, at least it's them.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
You know, but
Oh, my
still,
goodness.
we don't know what we're hearing anymore.
Wow.
Oh, that's just, wow.
I had no idea about this thing with Jagger.
Yeah, pitch correcting Jagger is very disappointing.
I listened to the first song because everybody says this new album is great, and it's very well produced. Steve Jordan's playing on most of it. The drum
Yeah.
sounds are amazing. The sounds are amazing. It's kind of like the 60s Stones with modern hip sounds. But on the other hand, first thing I hear is Mick singing in tune, and then I hear vocal harmonies. And I realize this is pitch corrected. He can't do that. And Mick Jagger's a great rock and roll singer. I'm not putting him down, but let's face it, he's not a crooner.
Yeah, yeah. There's a certain thing to that, right?
Yeah, the Stones have always been the opposite of slick, right? People say they were the first punk band. We're getting, because they were that. They were raw and nasty, you know, and that was the appeal of the band. And to have it pitch corrected, but the artists feel like they have to play this game too. They're going against perfection everywhere they look.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that takes out the sauce and the syrup of the stuff, you know?
We would agree. I don't know if anybody will notice it.
Huh.
Wow.
In the real public. But that one took me aback.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
it's a little bit off topic. One more thing on this production stuff. I'm just looking at some of the things you're supposed to be comfortable with. Set decoration, lighting, multicams, audio. And
My hair.
Audio for drums and for talking. Switching, post-production, editing, publishing, promotion, you know, marketing. That's a lot of stuff to put on somebody.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. I mean, I think, you know, this whole thing about us wearing all these different hats, the one frustrating thing about that is at the end of the day, we just want to play.
Right.
Or teach and play drums. And then, you know, this was David Garibaldi's point of like, he's like, oh man, you know, I'm spending so much time like trying to figure this stuff out. He's like, I just want to play.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we have to find the right balance, right? It can't consume everything. I did this over many, many, many years, right? So my set keeps changing, meaning that I put some clapboard on the wall back there behind my panels. So I had a student come in for half a day. We threw up the clapboard and put the panels back up. So, you know, I try to involve my students in this process. They learn from it. And at the same time, I try not to let it really consume my life. I mean, I do find myself, rather than making content, I'm helping other people with their content a lot of the time. So it's like the shoemaker thing, right? The shoemaker his family has no shoes because he's busy making shoes for everybody else. But you know, we're kind of in this thing, right? We have to learn how to edit video. I mean, right there's a learning curve that, you know, is frustrating. And again, we can take this on many levels. It could be very simple, you know, trimming the ends, put on a fade to black and a title, you know, and then there's multicam editing where we're syncing audio with many cameras and I can make suggestions all day about how to speed up these processes and learn it. I mean, I'm learning a new program for me, which is DaVinci Resolve. And so I've decided that over the winter, when it's a little quieter, I'll be really learning that editing program because it's become a sort of a necessity for me. But there's many ways to approach this. We do have to learn a little bit of all this stuff, or we're going to go broke paying people to do it for us, right? So at least if you learn some of the skills, it's going to save you a lot of money. But there has to be a little bit of a twinkle in your eye when you think of tech. You can't hate it. Because
my initial, you know, I had a cymbal company and I was doing advertising in magazines, and it's $2,000–$4,000 an issue, and they're every month, and there's like 5 of them, you know. And I said, well, I can just start shooting video, and started teaching myself how to do it and get some gear. And you could start off real easy, you know. You don't have to spend hardly anything to get moving.
Indeed.
And then take these on as you feel comfortable with it.
Yes. To that point, I always say at the beginning of every time I speak about this stuff, and it was one of the first things I said at PASIC last year when I did that clinic. I say, don't be afraid to just jump in and do it with whatever you have. Doesn't matter. It could be a webcam and a light bulb. Just start.
I remember going live a few times at the beginning with no idea that it would work.
Right.
You just throw it out there, man. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing is, you know, a lot of people are afraid to just put themselves out there, and they're so afraid of, you know, what the feedback is going to be. Is it going to work? You know, all the unknowns.
But that's what we do, man. There's a delete button. If you don't like it,
exactly.
Just get rid of it and start over.
And listen, you know, as musicians, that's what we do. You know, when you get in the room with some guys you've never played with, there's all the unknowns, and you learn to embrace the unknown. You know, so
exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, let me do a spot here. Another quick one for our friends at Hudson.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
I'm getting a cough drop.
And today I wanted to tell you about how much I really love the Hudson Music digital app. Okay, now check it out. It's an app that you can get for your device, and you can purchase books from the Hudson Music digital store and have them stored right on your device. The great thing about it is you always have it with you, and any content that might be video related or music related is right there at your fingertips. It's a wonderful resource.
Well, that's kind of a bridge that ties us together, because you can use that online. That Hudson Digital is fantastic, and it works very well in online settings. So let's talk about Jim Toscano, the drummer. Obviously, you're a drummer. You came up as a drummer. Give us a little brief bio.
All right, yeah. And by the way, that was Bobby Angeletto, who's a good friend of mine. Was also a tech client of mine in that last spot. So I grew up in Brooklyn playing, in school band and local bands. I almost quit because of a teacher that was particularly abrasive, I might say. In the very I just had a teacher that was sort of nasty, and I remember, I was maybe in 7th grade at that point, or 6th grade or 7th grade, and just being like, I don't want to do this anymore. It just wasn't fun. And
Whiplash experience?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, he would just stare at me and shake his head. Like, he just made it such an uncomfortable experience. Not that
cool.
Yeah, it was not cool. It wasn't, especially as a youngster, you want to share your passion and your, the enjoyment of playing, right? And sort of this guy just made me so miserable. And then my next teacher was this guy in Brooklyn that, it's funny because every once in a while I meet someone that studied with this guy that knows him. His name was Handsome Hal Parker. And Handsome Hal was total funny New York, like he lived in Sheepshead Bay. He wore like a really long, ratty leather coat, smoked a cigar all the time. He wore gym shorts under his leather coat, which was concerning. And he had like a sort of a big afro. He called it his Jew-fro. Right. Sorry if that's offensive, but that's what he called it. And he had
people call it. I don't think that's.
He had a spray tan, or he tanned, but just his face and his hands and wrists and his neck, so that when he wore a tuxedo, his hands and his face were tanned, but the rest of him wasn't. It was very bizarre. And that guy made it really fun. He was nuts. He made it a good time. It's a bit of a questionable ethics. But anyway, he kind of got me to play at a young age, as a kid, all of the dance rhythms, sort of telling me, I'm going to need all this stuff. And I believed him, and I worked on it all. And I was able to start doing club dates at a young age, because I knew how to play a mazurka or, whatever rhythm was coming up. And so I did all of that stuff. Then I got into sort of playing regional theater stuff, doing a lot of pits, regional theaters, and then off Broadway, and then getting on some Broadway sub lists. As a lefty, I will say that subbing is a tricky thing.
That's tough. Especially
no, I take that back.
Pit.
It's not tricky. It makes it almost impossible.
It's impossible, right?
Yeah.
Because
so Daniel
Broadway
Glass
Pit
and I laugh about
shit
that.
Everywhere, right?
What's that?
Broadway Pit is set up with shit everywhere.
Yeah, they should everywhere. But not only that, it's, it's tight.
Right.
And as Tommy Igoe's, like his Lion King setup, Joe B was telling me the story, Joe Bergamini, he had a list like that said what you could touch or move. And it said, you can move the floor tom height, the seat height, the snare height, and nothing else. Yeah. Nothing else. So, for me being a true lefty, a lefty on a lefty kit, there's no subbing is very difficult. So anyway, to that point, Daniel Glass and I always laugh about that. It's like, you just need other lefties as subs, or you have to be the guy that initiated the show.
Right.
So I got into doing, show stuff, and then working with different cabaret artists, different restaurant gigs, and sort of playing these cabaret shows. So doing a lot of that kind of stuff, and short stints with big bands. And, I had a very short stint with the Vince Giordano Big Band, which was super fun, playing 20s big band stuff, and mostly, a lot of sort of club date stuff. And then I got into recording and so working with songwriters, which is kind of where my heart is. I love working in the studio and recording with songwriters. So, and that's still, what I do a lot, mostly. And I record from home in my home studio here, which is part of my workflow, is that I can do tracks for people from home. And then, since I went through my cancer journey, I'm back to going out to studios and recording again, which is nice. The last few weeks I've been out, working. So I'm grateful for that. And sort of, picking and choosing the gigs I want to do and putting a lot of time into education these days. And I've always taught. So even, driving to class during college, I would do house visits along the way, or driving home, I would teach students. So I used to bring a little, a drum machine and my books and my sticks and go into people's houses. And then in my mom's basement in Brooklyn, I built a teaching studio with 2 drum kits, 2 practice pads, a mirror, and, did it from there. And so I've kind of always taught. In fact, when I was studying with handsome Hal Parker, I would take my lesson, which was $14 at the time, odd price, but 14. And then there were some kids down the block that would come over and they would give me $5 each, and I would teach them what I learned in my lesson. So I started, kind of going through the teaching process at that point as well.
So you're an educator as well, but you also have a book with Hudson, right? A lot
and
of
I have a book,
mirrors my own. I'm enjoying hearing your bio. Now, tell me about your book, though. And I have it right here, by the way.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Filling in the grooves, Jim.
So
Toscano.
it's 165-page. I like to think of it as an idea library, kind of organized in motifs. And so Joe B. Subtitled this "The Ultimate Guide to Drum Fills," which I appreciate. But it has basically 10 chapters of various fill ideas, and then in the sort of towards the back of the book, I made a section called Tribute, which is chapter 11, and I transcribed fills of Simon Phillips, Liberty DeVito, Phil Collins, John Bonham, Steve Smith, Billy Cobham, Jeff Porcaro, Stuart Copeland. Forget About It is the GAD section. 10 Steps to Tony. And Ringo Starr, Todd Zuckerman, so Neil Peart, and, on and on. And then play along charts in the book. But I kind of organized it in this sort of something to inspire students to explore. There's over 700 drum fills in the book. And it's not sort of, let's take this rhythm and then shift it on the grid and then shift it on the grid and then shift it on the grid. It's more of ideas that are developing different rates, developing different rhythmical ideas, different stylistic ideas, functions where we're learning to kick figures that are swung, that are straight, learning to play in between the cracks. So we're filling while our time is happening, layered fills, sort of. And this library kind of happened organically in my teaching. I was writing things down and writing down fills, and then eventually I pitched it to Joe Bergamini, who's my editor on the book, and so I signed with Wisdom Media as far as the publisher, and then it gets distributed as a paper physical copy through Alfred, and then it's in digital on Hudson on the wonderful app. And so, all of the tracks and videos and everything are embedded in the book on the Hudson app, which is so cool that you can just click on the headphones and, hear the example. And I'm also a drum book nerd. I love drum books. I have piles and piles of drum books on my shelf over there. But I love having the physical book too. So I'm kind of the type that gets the physical book and I get all the digital stuff and really try to immerse myself in the content,
Well, beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Adam, anything else you want to add to this at this point?
I think it's a great idea, man. It's great to have things codified and to have literature, so you can look at it and you can work on things. And, at the same time, like you said, you have tracks in there. Like I said before, everybody's got to learn to get this together. Hearing.
Yeah.
So often, I've seen transcriptions of drummers, and they may look very similar, but if you hear the two different drummers playing them, they sound so different.
Indeed, yeah.
And the other thing, which is something which I don't know if they'll ever figure out a way to do it, how you could transcribe feel.
Right.
That's an X factor.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I think it's always nice, and I think it's important that people, it's good to see everything, but being able to hear it too. So it's great that when you have something like this, you have tracks and you have the, audio representation.
Right. And my hope is that people take this material. I was my buddy Dave Stanhope. I was on a Zoom call with him this morning, doing a little troubleshooting on his rig, and he held up my book and he said he's using it with his students, and I was like, I just seeing people plant the seed, in other students. It's a wonderful thing, but really, what I'd love to see is people taking the material and then reworking it, reshaping it, making it their own, and then having their own versions of this material come out. That's really the point of it.
What's your opinion? You're bringing certain facts, and then you like to hear different people's opinions.
Exactly.
That's a good way to look at it. Like the three of us, for example, if we each sat at the kit and we played eighth notes on the hi-hat, 1 and 3 on the bass drum, 2 and 4 on the snare drum. That's all.
Vastly different.
Somebody's going to like one of us. Everybody's going to pick who they want for that. And it's all going to be different for each person. And that's all we're doing.
My first clinic back after being, out of commission for a long time healing, my first clinic back, I think I stole this from somebody that I saw do it at PASIC, but I had 12 drummers in the room and 6 were on drum kits at a time. Oh my God, we have a similar dog. I'll talk about that in a second. But oh my God, that's hilarious. I'll show you a picture in a second.
Okay.
But I had 6 different drummers playing at the same time. And actually, I brought them in one at a time, and they all played the same groove, right? Mm-hmm. They all played the same written beat.
Right.
And everybody's feel was vastly different from one to the other. And I was just proving the point that, your internal time and your internal feeling and what you draw upon as a human is going to be vastly different than the next guy. And just to prove that point, because we were going to work on my book and do fills, I wanted everybody just to play time and see how that personality from everybody is different. Right. And it's really remarkable that, as you said before, Adam, it's, you could take a bunch of drummers and play the same thing, but it's not the same thing. It's
absolutely.
Yeah. So indeed, man. Oh my goodness, I'm going to be teaching in a minute.
Yeah, I was just saying, we're coming up to an hour. You've been more than generous with your time. Jim Toscano is our guest. Adam Nussbaum, my esteemed co-host. And
nice.
Let me get you focused in on. Oh yeah. What's your dog's name?
Cooper.
Cooper.
Yeah, he's
What kind of?
Cosmo.
What is Cooper?
He's a golden doodle. He's enormous.
Okay. Oh, okay.
He's like 80 pounds. His head's about this big.
Oh, this guy's only 16 pounds of Bichon.
Got you. Okay.
I had my dog on my show once. I had my son off screen, and I would ask him, that old joke, who's the greatest baseball player? Roof. That's right, Babe Ruth.
Oh, that's
and I
great.
went through a bunch of those. And in the end, I said, get out of here. And the dog said, you think I should have said the Duca da Fonseca?
Oh, that's funny. Hey, check it out. Come here for a second, Louis. So just so you guys can see this, my next, I like to call them my patients. My next patient is coming in. Come here, get on camera.
Where is it?
You're on a live stream.
Welcome.
So Louis, my next patient today.
We're all farmers. It's a love thing, man.
Totally, 100%.
Toscano has been a wonderful guest. I think we might have
Thank
got
you,
to on
Kim.
Facebook.
Thank you so much, man. This is super fun. I
Adam,
will
thank
definitely
you.
have you guys on my podcast come January or February if you guys would honor me
Anytime
with
you
that.
can't get anyone better, let me know.
Awesome.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm going to go
Have
to the
a
theme
great
here.
Thanksgiving.
Everybody have a great
Have a happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Thank
Stay
you to my
safe.
guest.
All right,
Bye-bye.
take care.
Aloha.